Hannah Voss fed 6 people through 4 months of blizzard on a barrel of cornmeal, a side of salt pork, and the coals under a cast iron skillet she carried in a wagon from Ohio. She never wrote a recipe down, not one. She didn't have to. Her hands knew where the hot coals were and where the cool ones were. Her nose knew when the biscuit was done. Her mother had shown her, and her mother's mother before that, and the knowing passed from apron to apron without a word on paper. Today, most Americans couldn't build a fire that would bake a biscuit if their winter depended on it. We stand in front of an oven with a dial and a timer and a light, and we still burn the bread. But here's the twist, friend. The record now says Hannah Voss was doing something a modern chef pays 4 years of culinary school to learn and still can't do as well. She was reading heat with her hand. She was working 3 temperatures at once, on one fire, with one pan. And somebody, later on, made an awful lot of money making sure her granddaughters would feel like fools for even trying. I'm Silas Mercer, 7th generation on Mercer Ridge, up in the folds of these mountains. My people settled here in the 1790s and never left. My grandfather Eli was born in 1918, fed 8 children off this mountain through the Depression, and made me copy near every trick he knew into a leather journal before he passed at 94. Made me swear the old ways wouldn't die with me. This is me keeping my word. Now, some of what I'm about to count down would turn a modern stomach. Before we go on, there's something coming for this country, and the news won't say a word about it till it's already on your doorstep. It comes down to one number, 3 days. That's what the stores hold for you. Your grandfather's pantry held a winter, and the difference was never money. It was knowing. 904 pages of that knowing in one book. Water, fire, curing, canning, the plants that heal and the ones that kill. SilasMercer.shop. Links below. All right, back to it. Trick 14, I'll warn you now, is the one folks flinch at, and I'm not getting to it till we're deep in this list. Trick 6, you literally cannot legally buy the main ingredient in most states anymore, though your great-grandmother kept it on her counter in a crock. And trick 3, a university out of Pennsylvania quietly confirmed in 2018 that Grandma was right and the food companies were wrong the whole time. None of these tricks disappeared because they quit working. They disappeared because somebody got rich the day you started buying dinner in a box instead of making it in a pan. That's not on you, friend. They're good at selling. Before we count down, tap subscribe. Not for me, for the table. Because we're pulling these old skillets back onto the fire, and you'll want the next one they'd rather you forgot. Let's count down from 25. And by the time we get to number 1, you're not going to be asking what we lost. You're going to be asking who got paid when we stop cooking and how you take it back. Number 25, reading a fire in 3 zones with the back of your hand. Your great-grandmother didn't own a thermometer. She held the back of her hand a foot above the coals and counted. 2 seconds before pulling back. That was hot, the biscuit zone. 4 seconds, that was medium, the stew zone. 6 seconds, that was slow, the beans all day zone. 1 fire, 3 temperatures, 0 fuel wasted. A single armload of hickory ran a whole day of cooking. Then the gas range came in the 1920s with a dial marked in numbers. And the range company spent 30 years telling women that reading a fire with your hand was primitive. Eli wrote this one down in 48. The method still works. Real technique. Rate coals into 3 piles. Hot to cool and move the pan. 3 piles, 1 pan. Fed a family, cost nothing. That was reading the fire. The next one is what she cooked on it first thing every morning. Number 24, Biscuits baked in a cast iron skillet directly over embers. The skillet you see me holding, this same shape, this same weight, sat on coals in a Nebraska dugout, on a farmhouse hearth in Tennessee, on a chuck wagon tailgate in the Panhandle. Biscuits went in the pan went over medium coals, a few coals went on the lid. 12 minutes. Bread. Flour, lard, salt, a splash of soured milk. A dozen biscuits for the price of a handful of flour. Then Pillsbury put biscuits in a cardboard can in 1931 and told your grandmother she was wasting her morning. The can made money. The skillet didn't. The method needs no vindication. It's exactly how every good restaurant biscuit is still made, just with a gas oven pretending to be embers. Skillet, coals, bread. Every morning, forgotten in one generation. That was the bread. Next, what she cooked when she didn't even have a pan. Number 23, ash cakes. Cornmeal dough baked in the hot ash itself. When the skillet was on the stew, cornmeal dough went naked into the ash. Just cornmeal, water, a pinch of salt, patted flat, buried in hot ash, brushed off clean when the crust rang hollow. No pan needed, no fuel wasted. A cake big enough for 2 hands from a fistful of meal. This one didn't get sold against. It just got forgotten when the wood stove left the kitchen in the 1940s. Nobody profited off ash. Nobody profited off you forgetting it either, except every bread aisle since. The method works. You brush the ash off, the crust seals the cake. Wrap it in a cabbage leaf if you want a modern version. No pan, no dial. Bread from a fire. Gone. That was baking in the ash. Next, what she did with cornmeal when there wasn't even a fire big enough for a cake. Number 22. Cornmeal mush stirred in a tin cup on the coals. A tin cup, a handful of cornmeal, water from the kettle, salt. Set it in the coals, stir with a stick. 10 minutes. Breakfast. 1 cup fed 1 grown man on 2 cents of meal. On the trail, in a sod dugout, in a mining camp, this is what kept people alive. Then General Mills rolled out Wheaties in 1924 and spent the century telling children that breakfast came out of a box with a picture of an athlete on it. The method still works. 2 parts water to 1 part cornmeal, salt, low heat, stir. If you like it fancy, a spoon of bacon grease on top. A cup, a stick, 10 minutes. Cheaper than the cereal, and it sticks with you till noon. That was the mush. Next, what she kept in a tin by the stove that a modern cardiologist would clutch her pearls over. Number 21. The bacon grease tin by the stove. A tin can, usually a coffee can, sometimes a jelly jar, sat within arm's reach of the stove. Every strip of bacon, every rasher of salt pork, poured its grease into that tin, and the tin cooked the next 3 meals. A pound of bacon rendered near a cup of usable fat. That cup fried the eggs, seasoned the beans, greased the skillet, and buttered the cornbread. Nothing wasted. Then Procter & Gamble told women through the 1950s that animal fat would kill their husbands, and the little tin got thrown out in shame. Real practice. Strain hot grease through a coffee filter into a clean tin, keep it covered by the stove. Use within a month. 1 tin, 10 meals, 0 cost. Shamed off the counter. That was the fat tin. Next, what she made with it when the meat was already gone. Number 20. Skillet gravy from nothing but drippings, flour, and water. After she fried the pork, she didn't wash the pan. She spooned in flour, browned it in the drippings till it smelled like toast, then poured in water. Water, not milk when milk was scarce, and stirred it thick. A tablespoon of fat, a tablespoon of flour, a cup of water. Gravy for 4. Called it sop or sawmill gravy, or just the gravy. Then McCormick started selling gravy packets in 1962, and Betty Crocker's cookbook stopped teaching the pan method by 1968. Eli wrote this one down in 52. Real technique. Equal fat and flour, cook till nut brown, add liquid off the heat, stir back on. Salt and pepper heavy. 3 ingredients, 0 cost. Fed the bread, forgotten in a packet. Now before we go further, let me stop the count for a second. First pattern break. Right here is where this list stops being quaint. Everything so far they just made unnecessary. From here down, it starts being the trick somebody actively taught your mother to be ashamed of. Trick 14 is coming. So is trick 6. Stay with me. Number 19. Milk gravy stretched over yesterday's biscuits. The biscuits from yesterday morning were hard by supper. She split them, laid them in a bowl, and poured hot milk gravy, flour, a spoon of that bacon grease, milk, black pepper, right over the top. Called it a poor man's supper. Nobody at the table called it poor. 2-day-old biscuits, a cup of milk, a spoon of grease. Supper for 5. Then Wonder Bread hit shelves nationally in 1930 and taught a generation that stale bread was garbage instead of dinner. The method is just bechamel with black pepper, which every French restaurant charges you $18 for. Same 3 ingredients, old biscuits, new gravy, supper for a nickel. Thrown out for sliced bread. That was stretching bread. Next, how she stretched a single ham bone into a week of dinners. Number 18, the ham bone that ran a whole week. A single smoked ham bone with a little meat clinging on didn't get thrown out. Monday, it flavored soup beans. Tuesday, it flavored greens. Wednesday, it flavored a pot of Navy soup with whatever root was in the cellar. By Friday, it was still working. 1 bone, 5 suppers, fed a family of 8. The bone was already paid for. Then bouillon cubes came in from Weiler's in 1931, and the bone went in the trash in the name of faster. A restaurant in Charleston will sell you a $9 paper cup of artisan bone broth this week. Grandma made a gallon of it off a bone she'd have thrown out. Real method. Bone in cold water, simmer 4 hours, salt at the end. 1 bone, 5 suppers, $9 a cup now. Somebody's laughing. Next, what she did when even the bone was gone and the cellar was near empty. Number 17, pressure canning the summer to feed the winter. August meant a kitchen at 95 degrees, mason jars lined on the table, a pressure canner rocking on the stove, and every green bean, every tomato, every quart of soup beans going into glass to hold the family through February. A single Saturday put up 100 quarts. 100 quarts was a winter of suppers. Then Campbell spent the 1950s telling women canning was drudgery and a red and white can was liberation. The jars went to the yard sale. Here's the one part you don't skip, friend. Low-acid foods, beans, meat, corn, most vegetables must be pressure canned, never water bath. The United States Department of Agriculture has said this in plain English since 1988 in the Complete Guide to Home Canning, and it's not negotiable. Botulism isn't a myth. The old man canned every fall and never lost a jar because he followed the pressure and the time. Jars, pressure, time. Right, it feeds you. Wrong, it kills you. Do it right. Next, what she did with meat when there was no jar and no ice. Number 16, salt curing pork in a wooden box in the shed. The fall hog wasn't refrigerated. It was rubbed hard with salt, sometimes sugar, sometimes saltpeter, packed in a wooden box and left in the smokehouse or a cold shed till spring. One hog, salted right, fed a family a year. The salt cost pennies. The box was already there. Then General Electric put a home refrigerator in the kitchen in 1927, and by 1955, the smokehouse was a lawn ornament. The University of Georgia Extension still publishes safe curing guides. The ratios matter, the temperature matters, the time matters. Real method for the modern kitchen. Use a tested cure with the correct nitrite ratio. Don't eyeball it. Here's the one part you don't skip. Cure ratios are chemistry, not guesswork. 1 hog, 1 box, 1 year of meat. And the ratios are not a suggestion. Next, how she kept eggs on the counter with no refrigeration at all. Number 15, water glassing eggs in a crock in the pantry. A crock of clear liquid, sodium silicate and water sat in the pantry. Fresh, unwashed eggs laid that morning went in point down. The liquid sealed the shell. The eggs kept 9 months on the shelf without a lick of cold. A summer of eggs held over to a winter of eggs. 50 eggs in a crock for the price of the crock. Then home refrigeration got cheap in the 1940s, and the crock went to the barn. The egg carton at the store became the only egg most people knew. The method works exactly as written. Real technique. Unwashed farm eggs only. The bloom must be intact. 1 part sodium silicate to 11 parts cool boiled water. Submerge, cover, cool dark pantry. Rinse and cook before eating. 50 eggs, 1 crock, 9 months. Nobody sells you a crock anymore. Next is the one I told you would turn a stomach. Here it is, number 14, Souse and head cheese, using every scrap of the hog's head. The hog's head, jowls, ears, snout, tongue, got simmered until the meat fell off, chopped fine, seasoned with vinegar, black pepper, and sage, packed in a loaf pan and gelled overnight in its own broth. Sliced cold on bread for the field lunch. A part of the hog that most folks throw away today fed a family a week. 0 waste, 0 cost above what you'd already paid. Then the packing industry in the 1950s decided head meat was trim and started grinding it into hot dogs instead. Same meat, different label, higher margin. I'll be straight with you, friend. Nobody ate souse because it was delicious. They ate it because you don't waste a hog. But done right, clean simmer, hot vinegar, cold set, it fed folks through February. Charcuterie boards charge $22 a slice for this now. The head, the whole head, nothing wasted. Now it's in your hot dog, and you paid extra. Next, what she pounded into a pocket-sized meal that fed a man for a day. Number 13, Pemmican. Pounded jerky, rendered fat, dried berries. Strips of jerky pounded to powder on a flat rock. Rendered fat, warmed just till liquid, never boiling, never smoking. Dried service berries or huckleberries crushed in. Mixed by hand into a paste, pressed into cakes, wrapped in hide or wax paper. A 1-pound cake of pemmican fed a working man a full day of hard labor, kept a year in a cool cellar. Then Slim Jim expanded nationally in the 1980s, and Pemmican became a health food store curiosity at $28 a pound. Eli wrote this one down in 39. Real method. Fully dried lean meat, pound to powder, melt fat without smoking, 1 part fat to 1 part meat, mix, press, cool. Here's the one part you don't skip. The meat has to be fully dried or it spoils. Meat, fat, berries, a day's work in your pocket. Now sold as gourmet. Let me stop the count again. Second pattern break. We just crossed into the tricks they don't teach in a single home economics class in America anymore, because they took home economics out of the schools in the 1960s and 1970s. That wasn't an accident. Somebody wanted a whole generation that couldn't feed itself. It worked. Keep going. Number 12. Jerky dried in the smokehouse or over the wood stove. Thin strips of lean venison or beef, salted, hung on hickory sticks in a smokehouse, or later hung from the oven rack with the door propped open. 2 days. Meat you could carry in your pocket for a month. A whole deer, jerked, filled a shoebox. A shoebox fed a hunter through a season. Then Slim Jim in the 1980s and Jack Links in the 1990s put jerky in a plastic bag at the gas station for $8 an ounce. The method still works. Real technique. Lean cuts only, trim every scrap of fat, slice thin against the grain, salt or brine, low heat with airflow, dry till it cracks but doesn't snap. A shoebox, a season, $8 an ounce now. She'd laugh. Next, what she poured on those biscuits when the pig was already gone. Number 11, salt pork soaked and simmered with root vegetables. A hunk of salt pork from the crock, soaked 2 hours to pull the salt down, browned in the Dutch oven, then simmered with potatoes, carrots, cabbage, and a couple of onions till the whole pot smelled like Sunday. Half a pound of salt pork fed 6. The salt pork was 5 cents worth of scrap that had been keeping in the crock since November. Then Swanson's frozen television dinner in 1953 put a whole meal on an aluminum tray for 98 cents, and the Dutch oven went in the attic. The method is exactly right for what a modern kitchen calls a braise and charges $32 for at a farm-to-table restaurant. Salt pork, roots, 1 pot, called a braise now, same supper. Next, what filled that same pot the night the pork was gone? Number 10, a pot of soup beans, cornbread on the side. Dried pinto beans soaked overnight in cold water. Drained. Simmered slow with a ham bone, an onion, a couple of dried peppers, salt at the end. Cornbread in the skillet on the side. Bowl of beans, wedge of cornbread, dash of vinegar. 2 cups of dried beans and a leftover bone fed 9 people for a day. Cost, in 1935 money, about 6 cents. Then Kraft rolled out boxed macaroni and cheese in 1937 for 19 cents a box. And Betty Crocker spent the next 40 years teaching women that a bean pot was drudgery. A food magazine in Asheville right now charges $34 for a bowl of soup beans and calls it Appalachian cuisine. The same beans, from a bag, with a bone. Real method. Overnight soak, 3-hour simmer, salt last. Beans, cornbread, grease, fed 9, 6 cents, $34 now. Next, the pot that fed a whole trail crew a month at a time. Number 9, chuck wagon 1-pot stew, month after month, never boring. On a trail drive, the cook, the cocinero, had a Dutch oven, a fire, and whatever the crew shot or bought at the last settlement. Beef, water, onions, potatoes, salt, black pepper. A long, slow simmer while the men rode. One pot fed 12 cowboys twice a day for weeks. The pot never left the coals. Then canned stew from Dinty Moore hit shelves in 1935, and the Dutch oven went from working tool to museum piece. The method is the ancestor of every slow cooker sold today. Real technique. Sear the meat, cover with water, add roots, low fire, don't rush it. One pot, 12 men, 20 miles a day, fed by a fire. Next, what she baked when the yeast jar had gone dead. Number 8. Sourdough starter kept alive on the back of the stove. A crock of flour and water paste, fed a spoonful of flour each morning, sat on the warm back of the wood stove year-round. That was the yeast. That was every loaf, every biscuit, every flapjack. A single starter, born from wild yeast on the flour itself, ran a family's bread for a lifetime. Cost, a spoon of flour a day. Then Fleischmann's put dry, active yeast in a foil packet in 1945, and the crock went cold in 10 years. A bakery in Portland right now sells a wild fermented sourdough loaf for $12. Same starter, same method. Real technique. Equal flour and water, feed daily, keep warm, use half, refresh the rest. One crock, a lifetime of bread, $12 a loaf now. Now, before we count the last handful, one more break. Third pattern break. This is where the tricks get personal. The ones Grandma didn't just cook, she made from scratch, from the ground up, from what was already in the yard. We're close to number 1 now. The list is about to tell you what it's really been about. Number 7. Sour milk biscuits leavened by Clabber. When milk sat out in a crock and turned thick and tangy, clabbered, it wasn't spoiled. It was ready. She stirred it into flour with a pinch of soda, cut in lard, and the acid and the soda did the work no store-bought leavener needed to do. A quart of soured milk that would have been trash leavened 3 dozen biscuits. Then Calumet baking powder took over kitchens in the 1930s, and sour milk started sounding like something you throw out. Modern buttermilk biscuits are this same chemistry. Real method today. Use cultured buttermilk plus a pinch of baking soda. The reaction is identical, and you skip the raw milk question entirely. Sour milk, soda, fat, flour. 3 dozen biscuits from what you'd have thrown out. Next, the one you can't legally buy in most states, though she had it on the counter every day. Number 6. Raw milk straight from the cow, in a crock in the spring house. The morning milk went into a stone crock, the crock into the spring house where the creek ran cold under the floorboards, and by evening the cream had risen to the top for skimming. 1 cow, milked twice a day, fed a family fresh milk, butter, buttermilk, cheese, and Clabber. Every dairy product in the kitchen, from 1 animal. Then in 1924, the federal government began pushing pasteurization laws that over the decades made unpasteurized retail sales illegal in most states. The dairy industry lobbied hard. There was money in bottled, branded, homogenized milk. There was none in your cow. I'm not your doctor, friend, and I'm not telling you to break the law in your state. I'm telling you what she had. If you want the modern legal version, whole cream top pasteurized milk from a small dairy is the closest legal cousin. 1 cow, every dairy in the house. now illegal to sell in most places. That's not forbidden by accident. Next, what she did with the apples off the tree behind the house. Number 5, apple butter, cooked all day in a copper kettle over the fire. Bushels of windfall apples, cored and quartered, went into a copper kettle over a low outdoor fire. All day somebody stirred with a long wooden paddle, sugar, cinnamon, a spoon of clove. By nightfall the fruit had gone deep brown and thick enough to hold a spoon standing up. A bushel of apples nobody would buy, bruised, wormy, windblown, became 12 quarts of apple butter. 12 quarts held a family through winter breakfasts. Then Smucker's started shipping jarred jam nationally in the 1940s, and the copper kettle went in the shed. Eli wrote this one down in 57, and I'll be honest with you, the first batch I ever stirred by myself, I looked away for 10 minutes and scorched the whole kettle. You could smell it clear down the holler. He didn't yell. He just said, "The paddle don't stir itself, son." Never did that twice. Bushel, kettle, all day, 12 quarts, and you stir it or it burns. Next, how she stretched every drop of fat in the kitchen. Number 4, rendering cracklings and never wasting a drop. After the hog was butchered, the fat scraps, the leaf lard from around the kidneys, the back fat, went into a big cast iron pot on low heat all afternoon. The fat melted clear. The little bits of skin and meat left behind, cracklings, got salted and eaten hot or crumbled into the cornbread. One hog's fat gave a family a year of cooking fat and a pound of cracklings for the bread. Then margarine, heavily marketed by industrial oil companies through the 1960s, replaced lard in most homes, and cracklings vanished with it. Real method: low, slow, no water, strain into clean jars. Here's the one part you don't skip. Never leave rendering fat unattended. Fire risk is real. One hog, a year of fat, cracklings for the bread, nothing wasted. Next, the one the food scientists spent 70 years catching up to. Number 3, rendering and using lard as the everyday cooking fat. The jar of clean white lard sat on the shelf next to the salt. It fried the eggs, made the pie crust flaky, greased the biscuit pan, and seasoned the beans. It was the default fat of the American kitchen for 200 years. A single hog's leaf lard rendered near 30 pounds of pure cooking fat. 30 pounds ran a family a year. Then in 1911, Procter & Gamble launched Crisco, hydrogenated cottonseed oil, and spent the next 60 years telling your grandmother her kitchen fat would stop her husband's heart. Penn State published a study in 2018 confirming lard's fat profile is more favorable than the shortening that replaced it. Not a fringe study, a land-grant university. The food companies were wrong. Real method: render leaf lard on low heat, strain twice, keep in a cool cupboard. 1911, 60 years of shame. 2018, vindication. Grandma was right the whole time. Next, the one nobody outlawed and everybody quit doing anyway. Number 2, cooking from a garden, a cellar, and a smokehouse, never a store. The garden gave the vegetables. The root cellar held the potatoes, onions, carrots, cabbages, and apples through winter. The smokehouse held the meat. The springhouse held the dairy. She went to the store for salt, sugar, coffee, and flour. 4 things, and cooked from her own land the rest. A family of 8 fed off 2 acres and a hog. The grocery bill for a month was $2 in 1935 money. Then A&P and Kroger built supermarkets through the 1930s and 1940s. And by 1960, the grocery aisle had replaced the cellar entirely. The method needs no institutional vindication. Every farmer's market resurgence, every backyard garden movement, every homestead channel is a slow, expensive attempt to reclaim what she just did. Garden, cellar, smokehouse, store for 4 things. Now the store is everything. Which brings us, friend, to number 1. And number 1 isn't a trick at all. Number 1 isn't a trick. Number 1 is the thing every trick above it was pointing at. Number 1 is a woman who could feed 6 people through a Nebraska winter on a barrel of cornmeal, a side of salt pork, and the coals under a skillet. Number 1 is a woman who read the fire with the back of her hand, kept the yeast alive on the back of the stove, held eggs on the pantry shelf in a crock, salted a hog in a wooden box, and never wrote a single one of these tricks down because her hands already knew them, and she assumed her daughter's hands would too. Number 1 is the self-fed table, the one that owed the store 4 things: salt, sugar, coffee, flour, and owed the world nothing else. Hannah Voss, that homesteader on the sod outside Grand Island, she lived till 1919. Her 3 daughters lived till the 1960s. Her granddaughters were the first Voss women in 4 generations who couldn't bake a biscuit without a can. The record didn't reverse itself. Somebody reversed it. There was no money in Hannah's kitchen. There was billions in her granddaughters. That's what this list has really been. Not a memory of dishes. A map back to a table that was hers, and yours by blood, and can be yours again. 1 trick, 1 skillet, 1 Saturday at a time. Now let me be straight with you before we close. I'm not selling you fear. This isn't prepper doomer talk. This isn't the grid goes down next Tuesday. This isn't a bunker channel. And some of what I laid out, the canning, the curing, the raw mill, the health department looks at sideways for real reasons. Respect the line. Pick 1. Just 1. Not all 25, just 1 this week. Save the bacon grease in a tin by the stove. That's trick 21. Cost you nothing. Bake a pan of biscuits in a cast iron skillet on Saturday morning. That's trick 24. 1 skillet. Put on a pot of soup beans with a ham bone on Sunday. That's trick 10. 6 cents a beans. That's it. 1 trick, 1 weekend. Your grandmother would recognize her kitchen in yours again. I put up 12 quarts of apple butter myself this fall, the way Eli wrote it down in 57. Took me a Saturday, cost me nothing but the apples off the trees behind the cabin. It'll feed me clear to spring, and I stirred it this time. Tell me down below, friend, did your grandmother do any of these? What trick did she do with her hands that nobody wrote down, that nobody in your family does anymore? The one that gets the most comments is the one I count down next. Here's the truth of it. Your grandmother knew every one of these 25. Somebody just didn't get the chance to pass them down to you. That wasn't your fault, but they're yours again now. You heard them. You carry them. Don't let them die on your watch the way somebody let them die on hers. Next time we're going down into the cellar. 25 things your great-grandmother stored underground that fed her family from October to April, without a refrigerator, without a freezer, without a dime spent at the store. And the year the grocery chains made sure you'd forget a cellar was ever a room in a house. If you want that one, subscribe. Not for the numbers, for the keeping. Every person who taps that button is one more kitchen where the old ways don't die. That's the work. That's the promise. Keep the old ways. They kept